venture capital, golden ticket, or giant Ponzi scheme?
Who wouldn't want a piece of that magical money showering pie? Let's get ready for Unicorn Porn, a podcast for founders who roll their eyes at phrases like "we're killing it" and "changing the world."
We riff about all the things you wish you could say out loud but can't or won't, like investor horror stories, founder mistakes, and bloated valuations.
The media has perpetuated this addiction to unicorn porn.
Nobody says if you take money, you have to constantly be raising money.
Before reality hits in Silicon Valley, companies exit.
I used to feel embarrassed that I wanted a lifestyle business.
Warning, these unfiltered conversations are highly opinionated, brutally honest, and politically incorrect. Please stop listening now if you're easily offended.
Unicorn Porn is brought to you by Lloyd Lobo, Wall Street Journal bestselling author and co-founder of Boast AI, and Melissa Kwan, co-founder and CEO at eWebinar.
So Lloyd, my company is pretty young, right? The product's been live for 3.5 years. And in those short years, we've had a number of hiring mishaps already. So starting with a dev shop that we worked with for the first year that I wanted to have build the first version of the product. We spent about $280,000, never recovered. The second is we hired 5 different marketing agencies and consultants. That didn't work out. One of which actually was a brother of a celebrity digital marketer, so came at a high recommendation. 3 of them were ad buyers that we kept on for, on a retainer for 6 months. Didn't do anything for us. One of them was a growth hacker that promised $500K in ARR in 12 months, quit in month 2 when he realized that it was too hard. One of them was a designer that was a friend's boyfriend who apparently didn't want any feedback, and he would be offended if we gave any feedback even on his first version. So that didn't turn out very well. And 2 of them were juniors that we were really excited about, both of which ghosted us. And, they were both younger and Gen Z. And one of those we actually hired after sifting 50 resumes from a code school. So the thing is, with us as a small company, hiring is not just a financial decision, right? It's an emotional decision, right? We don't have the resource. When we choose to hire someone, we're really, really investing in that person. And I've been hiring people, building teams for 14 years. I've never had a harder time hiring than in the last 2 years. Like, why do you think hiring is so freaking hard?
I think this is a trickle-down effect of the unicorn porn, right? If you see what happened in the last 2 years, we created a record number of unicorns, billion-dollar companies. Something like 1.5 unicorns a day were minted over the last 2 years, like 2020 and 2021. So what happened was the pandemic was a black swan event. Everyone needed to go online. You couldn't transact in person. So you'd sign up for tools and services from startups, right? Like Zoom, Shopify, Twilio, you needed these things. And this made startups experience fast, rapid growth. Coupled with low interest rates, money started flooding the markets to invest in these companies. Then people who were not venture capitalists, like hedge funds, like Tiger Global, started hitting the market and saying, hey, we just need, every recession has 1 or 2 companies like an Airbnb or Uber come out. We need to find one of these. And so they started to invest in rapid pace. So if you see Tiger Global preceding the pandemic did 40 deals and during the pandemic did 400 or so, right? And so when they do that, there's obvious, when you're moving at high pace, you're not checking all the boxes. There's obvious lapses in due diligence. And so we invested in hundreds upon hundreds of overvalued companies. But now these companies flush with cash who got a forward 12-month valuation of a unicorn or more, maybe 1 billion, or decacorn became a term. It's crazy, like decacorn became so common, right? A unicorn was rare enough, a decacorn became a thing. They started throwing words like the unicorn is not rare anymore. Unicorn is common. We need to see decacorns. Like, what the hell is a decacorn, right? It started to remind me of the Transformers. Like, what is going on? But Nonetheless, these companies now, to hit those unicorn growth goals, had to hire. And when you hire at pace, even we went from 30 to 130 people in 8 months. You're having lapse in due diligence, right? You're having lapses in due diligence because you want to hire at pace. Then what happened was people started to realize when 2022 rolled around that they didn't explode the market. They just rolled forward a market by a couple of years because of the Black Swan event. In 2022, people started missing their numbers because the market didn't continue to experience the same growth, coupled with the interest rates went high. The interest rates saw multiple increases. The market crashed. Valuations fell. And you get now so many unicorns that started to not only be overvalued, but not performing and not hit the numbers, right? Like not be profitable. Their average revenue per employee is really low. And they had to trim the fat. The VCs went from grow at all cost advice to trim the fat, aim for profitability. So what happens then? You went from creating a delusional workforce, overpaying them. That workforce has now adjusted to their new reality, more money. What happens when a person gets more money? They may go and get a mortgage, they may get a car, they may put their kids in a better school. But now you're laying off this workforce. And now trimming the fat, you've flooded the market with a bunch of mediocre employees who think they're worth more. And this creates a crazy dynamic, right? This is all a function of the unicorn porn crashing.
I mean, this is the pain that we feel, right? As a small company, as a big company, who cares, right? You got recruiters, you got money, you have HR, you're constantly hiring people want to work for you. But as a small company, you're in an industry where people are always like almost looking for the next best thing, right? What are the benefits? Do I get equity? What are the options? You haven't even come on board yet. And that's a reality that we live in. And not only, as we, have talked about before, is like the US wages were already out of whack, right? But it's not just the US anymore because the world is flat. So all these US companies are also outsourcing to the firms I work with. So in the last couple of years, we've seen it normalize a little bit now, but 2 years ago, like we were fired by our agency because we only had one dev when all these other companies went to them, wanted 10. So then they wanted to move up market. They didn't want to work with the startup that has one dev, right? And so it's changed the market for us. But I think it's created exactly what you're saying is like people want to go back to where they were before, right? So, and now we can't afford them anymore. And then if they do work with us, they feel like they're taking a concession and then maybe something else better comes along and then we lose them.
I'm taking a pay cut. Well, what is your history of getting that pay to begin with, right? Like if you did it for 1-2 years. And here's the thing, the more and more people I talk to that have been laid off or like, coming off this pandemic fueled boom and bust, they want to get the same pay, but not do as much work.
We all
right?
do. I do. Yeah.
And the other thing is, us, when we were hiring at pace, I can point out 2 specific incidents where we were paying market, if not better than market, and we still lost to companies that had raised more money, of course, in different industries, and grossly overpaid. We lost a Brazilian developer to another company for $350,000 salary, and this person had like 4 or 5 years of work experience. We lost a Canadian developer to a US company that had raised, I think, a couple $100 million for $400,000. What are you teaching the market? Because you're in a hurry and you don't want to do the due diligence, so you just overpay and be like, let's just get the job done.
I mean, the other problem is like like when the job market was abundant, it created this idea that if I change my job, I can get a promotion. If I get hired somewhere else, I can get paid more.
Which is true, actually. Like, a lot of people say, and I've experienced this through friends, is every time you change a job, your pay goes a little higher. So people then don't join for the passion, but they basically look at it as a video game. I'll stick around here for a few months, get some skills, and then I'll trade up and trade up and trade up. And eventually I might land at something that I really love. But the whole longevity doesn't exist anymore. Now, there's pros and cons of this, right? Because a lot of people care about their lifestyle and experience, and if they're not getting it at a company, they don't want to stay, they want to cut their losses. Unlike our parents were like, work at the same company till you're 65 and then retire. But there's a common ground here. If you haven't been at bats at one place long enough to generate results, then it just tells me that you're not serious and you're not going to do it for my company either.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how else to solve this, but it's because of all that we needed to look in other countries, right? Like in other countries where we can afford to pay market rate or higher, where people value their jobs. They're not looking to bounce from startup to startup because maybe the job market in their local market is not as vibrant as in the US, Canada, or Europe. Like we were forced to do that, but I actually love it because we actually end up attracting team members that value where they are and we're not afraid to lose them.
There's another dynamic at play here, right? The education system in the US and Canada has shifted from meritocracy and grading to everyone's level playing field, no grades, and we're all the same kind of thing. And it's created this dynamic where, you know, they just said that 25% of the Gen Zs take either one of their parents inside an interview. 80+% ghost the interview or like don't show up on the first day of the job. But there are other countries like Asia and Middle East and India where people are still surviving on the ethics of meritocracy. These companies will just start hiring there. Ultimately, we say this over and over again, your biggest responsibility as a founder is your customers, your shareholders, your employees, and you got to do right by them. If you can't be a business person and be patriotic at the same time. In trying to be patriotic and hire local, you can't destroy your company. And so if it becomes increasingly harder to hire employees that will drive you ROI, that you're going to go to places that will. Labor arbitrage is a thing. Generative AI is a thing. Low code, no code is a thing. Leverage that to help you grow faster for the best ROI.
I mean, this ghosting thing just really gets to me, right? Like, where is the resilience or where is the accountability, right? Like, I could never have imagined in my 20s not showing up for an interview, right? Like, or like not showing up after I get the job, right? And we had 2 people ghost our company. And I'm sorry to say, like, they were Gen Z. And one of them, you know, wasn't really delivering. You know, she's been with us for a few months. My CEO like didn't want to make her feel bad. And we thought about it for like 2 months before we even said, you know, maybe we wanted to tell her like, hey, like maybe we're expecting a little bit more from you. You know, I kid you not, he started that conversation for like 2 minutes. He told me this afterwards. He started that conversation for 2 minutes. And then she was like, I'm sorry, I'm not in the mind space to have this conversation right now, and just hung up. Like, so now I'm like, well, what do I get? Like, what do I do as a company? Right. Like, and I just don't understand this new generation is where is the resilience and accountability to just work hard and appreciate where you are?
You know, as much as I hate overgeneralizing, this keeps happening. And the devil's advocate in me says, this is what the previous generation said about our generation. It's just happening a lot more, right? We normalize taking it easy.
Maybe too much.
A little too much. Everything is normalized. It's okay. You want to not show up to work. It's okay. There's no repercussions for making frivolous decisions. And that's fine, right? As a country, as a generation, as a society, that's fine. You can have no repercussions for making frivolous decisions. But as a business owner, I have repercussions if I make frivolous decisions. So I am going to go and find the people for my business that understand and appreciate risk and appreciate the job and have the hunger and have the drive and want to show up and don't make frivolous decisions.
What I really want to talk about is like the people you shouldn't have on your team. So the first one I want to bring up again was the first scenario where I hired a dev shop to build the first version of our product, and didn't end that relationship until like 12 months later. But I kind of knew that it wasn't working out. And it was, the thing is, I don't know code. I don't know product. And I was so sick of trying to manage engineers for 10 years that I came into this company thinking I didn't need a co-founder. That's how little I knew about product. I wanted to start a tech company with no co-founder. And I wanted to offload all this stuff so I could focus on the business. And while I don't know how to code, I know good software from bad software, because bad software doesn't work and good software works. And it wasn't until I brought David in a year later to help advise, within 2 weeks the product started working, that I knew that he needed to be my co-founder and I needed to end that relationship with that dev shop. So now when people are like, oh, I don't have a co-founder, or I don't have a tech person, should I hire this team in India or a dev shop? I'm like, please don't do that. Like, don't make the same mistake I did, unless you have a very strong person on your side that's in product thinking about this as much as you.
It's important to have all the skills, if not try to learn all the skills you need to, even if it's on the fly. A lot of it is on the fly to move the business forward, right? You need to talk to customers and try to convince them to buy your product, because you'll nail your messaging and the ideal customer profile, and you'll get the feedback on what to build. The same way, I think one of the most underrated but required skills for one of the founders to have is product management. Talking to customers, distilling their feedback into dev requirements in the shape of user experience. There's this great course on Udemy called 7 Steps to Build a Successful Startup by Janice Fraser. I took that. I took a UX course at UCLA online, and I read the book Getting Real. Those 3 things early, like 10 years ago, helped me. Like, I can't describe how much they helped me, because then there's no scope creep. You're speaking with the devs in the conversation that they can understand. The rate at which your startup will grow is directly proportionate to the rate at which you can learn. So learn these things.
But it's not just about the UX, right? I think more than that, and the situation we were in was, I just didn't know how to critique the code. Like, I didn't know what was being built. And yeah, if every dev shop was like a CTO, like your own CTO, that would be amazing. But they're not, right? Like, not all software is built the same.
And then,
right?
you hire cheap, and then you get what you pay for.
Yeah, and that's the worst. And the thing is, we didn't hire cheap. We hired from a fairly like well-priced firm in Canada, because I wanted a good product, right? And so what ended up happening was, because I didn't have someone critiquing the code, people were just building it however they wanted, but I didn't really know. That's why things didn't work, right?
It's spaghetti code.
But how do you know that, right? And so every dev shop will say, yeah, we're going to do it. This is not that hard for us. We've done it before. But a lot of times the incentives are misaligned, right? Because dev shops are paid on project. Ours was paid by milestones. There were like 4 or 5 milestones. So they wanted to hit the milestone, and the milestone doesn't include quality, right? The milestone includes it working up to that point, whatever the defined milestone is. So I had to learn that, right? And I didn't know that until someone else came in, because it was taking too long. I can't keep burning my time and this money and not have a product to sell, because I am bootstrap. I was funding this with my own money.
100%. And that's the thing. I think having the product and the UX knowledge helps you convey what to build concisely, so they don't color outside the box. How they build it, you don't know, right? And this is why I'm a big fan of low-code solutions. I think at Boast, we sold the first several $100,000, even I think $1 million, and we were doing Wizard of Oz. Behind the scenes, we were doing it manually. And Alex built the first version of the product using Zoho Creator, which is a low-code, even a clunky low-code solution, low-code nonetheless, and Zapier. And we got it working. And I think that served us maybe till a couple million in revenue, right? And sometimes you have to do these things because what it costs you as a founder is time and pain. And maybe in the early days when you have no money, that is cheaper than taking a loan against your house or losing your savings on a dev firm that you have no way to vet.
Yeah. And I mean, my solution now for other people when they talk about like wanting to do that, like what I did is, you'd rather wait to find someone who is strong in product before you hire anybody else. Because if you're someone with no product, no coding experience, it's like starting a restaurant without a chef. You just don't do it. So the second person or personality, I guess, that you shouldn't have on your team is just hiring the most convenient person that's right there right now. I think a lot of startups, and particularly bootstrap startups, do that. And for us, it was our friend's boyfriend who was a designer, because we wanted to do this product hunt launch, and then we wanted, fake product shots in the first 5 slides. And it was just a person that was there. And we didn't interview at all, right? And it just turned out to be not just a bad experience in terms of a working relationship, but I don't talk to that friend anymore.
Fortunately, we're in a world where there's so many marketplaces for contractors like that. Today, you can go on Dribbble, and you can go on Odesk and Elance and Fiverr, and leverage that. Leverage those contractors who can sign up to a deliverable, so you don't have to pay them if they don't give you the deliverable versus hiring the convenient hire or the friend. I actually don't enjoy hiring good friends that I personally know or relatives, because I've always found it's never really worked for me in a great way. I've always found that they have this innate subconscious view that person will understand.
Yeah, and it's so hard to get rid of them because you're emotionally tied.
Yeah,
and
so
then
don't do it.
You just kind of let it slide for a long time before you rip the Band-Aid off.
Building a business is risky enough. Like a startup is like jumping out of a plane and building your parachute on the way down, right? Don't add undue risk to your business, undue stress, because you're just making your life harder. And hiring like friends and relatives, not on meritocracy, but because they're just the convenient hire or they'll do work for cheap. If a friend or a relative does work for you for cheap, they're more likely to act like you owe them than strangers.
Yeah, that's true. The other one I talked about in the beginning was hiring marketing agencies. And now I'm not saying those marketing agencies I hired were not good for what they were doing, but I think part of it was my fault. Was I hired them too early because I was so desperate for revenue. Like, they told me that they could get me eyeballs and, clicks and conversions and trials and all that stuff, right? But we were so early that we didn't even know what we were selling. We didn't have the product messaging. We didn't know our ICP. My biggest mistake was I wanted to hire people to take away my pain. And my pain was I didn't know marketing. Nobody on our team knew marketing. So we're just throwing money at the problem and hoping someone else would figure it out for us. But in the early days, the founding team and the founders figure out what they're selling. You cannot engage someone else to do that job for you. And I'm not saying don't hire anyone at all, but you gotta learn what you're hiring for by getting your hands dirty and understanding that task and role before you even begin to go and hire someone else for that.
100%. And that's a big motto of mine. And Alex and I at Boast, we never hired people for jobs one of us didn't do ourselves. Not because of anything other than we didn't have money and we were cheap. And for me, my motto in life is beg, borrow, barter, and then pay, right? So beg if you can get it for free, then borrow if somebody has the resource for a short amount of time, and then barter up. The people who built our second website, I gave them a free sponsorship at Traction, and they did the website for free. Beg, borrow, barter, and then free. And so if we had to make a hire, we knew what they were doing specifically, because we didn't have time or energy to waste money. And anytime we didn't follow that rule is when we failed. The hire didn't work out. It's very, very important, especially in the GTM side of things. In the early days, if the founders don't go and get the first 20, 30 customers, you're not going to be able to hire no magical growth hacker or sales leader to do that for you, because you need to distill who's the customer you're talking to, what is the messaging that resonates, and tie it to your vision. They're not going to create the vision for you. In fact, they're going to get frustrated because they thought you had the basics figured out, and they signed up for a compensation that has a variable component, right? Commissions or some performance pay, and they'll not hit that. The other thing is hiring these people, like agencies, marketers, before you have product market fit. Because if your churn is super high, then you're just taking that money and dumping it in fire. Right? It's very easy to acquire customers to at least sign up, right? You can put any kind of messaging that will resonate with that ICP and like sort of trick people into signing up. But the goal is not to trick people into signing up. Your job is to grow engaged users. The quickest way to fail is to grow users that are not engaged in your product. It's a vanity metric. It feels good. It's empty calories. It's not good for you.
Hey guys, real quick. Think about how you found out about this podcast. Maybe you saw it on social or someone sent it to you. The only way this grows is by word of mouth. So if you're willing to help us out by sharing it with others you think would enjoy this podcast as much as you do, it would mean a lot to us. Whether that's writing a review, sharing a tweet, or telling your next door neighbors, that would be amazing. Thanks so much. And now let's get back to the episode.
And here's a pro tip for people listening or watching. No agency is going to say, I can't do it.
100%.
Every single agency is going to say, yes, I can do this. Give me a retainer. The retainers are, I feel like there's like a marketing price control association. Retainers always have like 5K.
Retainer are tied to that is people that charge you time and materials, right? It's misaligned incentives. Sign up to pay on deliverables that are tied to business outcomes, how many leads you generate that are qualified, that turn to closes, kind of thing, sales qualified leads, not volume, not retainer, because it's easy, right? It's a cop-out. Like they get paid to do the work. Help. If you said you can do this, then sign up for the outcome.
I mean, the thing is I fell into the trap because I didn't know marketing of thinking I needed to create a leads machine.
Yeah.
Because we're self-serve, right? And so that's what everybody does. So I want to spend $1 and earn $2. Like I'm like everything that I read, every marketing person I talk to is telling me to do that. So I wanted to do that. And that's why we try 3 different ad buyers who are, again, all on retainers, right? So what I realize now is, what are we buying ads on? What are we even selling? We don't have a scroll stopper.
Yeah.
Like when you're buying ads, like you're literally burning money in the fire and you get 1-2 seconds to stop someone from scrolling. So if you don't have a mature product, like if you're not in a mature product category, like a CRM, like they're not going to stop and see, oh, what is this? Maybe I should replace what I have.
Ads are like, driving on the 101 in San Francisco and you see a billboard. There's so many billboards, right? In Silicon Valley. You're driving 100 miles an hour. What's the billboard that causes you to brake and take a second look, right? You need that. Tied to that though, if you have a product that is high churn, even if they come to your product, they won't use it. They will leave. So make your life easy. I think your first step is to validate the market by talking to customers and get a few people to pay you to try it out. The next step is to optimize for engagement, usage. And once you have those two figured out, one kind of customer or an ideal customer, and they are using your product, then you can invest in figuring out the right channel. Until then, you can brood it through referrals and emails and people that you know and forums, etc. Because when you try to build something scalable, repeatable, the product also should be used repeatably. If there's no repeated usage, then you just have this sort of revolving door of leads coming into your product and leaving.
I mean, I think in terms of marketing, right, especially with founders like me that don't know anything about marketing, is just try to get to know what each facet of marketing is for, right? Your SEO, your ad buying, your content generation, your personal branding. Like you maybe one day can hire people to do those things for you, but if you don't have a baseline for what you're hiring for, you can't tell someone what to do, nor would that person you hire respect what you say, right? And that's why we stopped. Like we were throwing in so much money at marketing that we thought, you know what, let's just own this. Let's own it first. And now that, now we have kind of an idea of what we're doing, now we're looking at people to help take things off our plate after doing it all ourselves.
Do it yourself. When you know what good looks like, and you create the playbook, then hire the person to fill that. Because it's very rare that somebody will create the playbook for you when you have none of it figured out, right? It's very, very rare that somebody can come and figure out the vision and figure out the customer base and how does it tie and then deliver the outcome. It's very hard. Like with developers, everyone says, oh, I need a developer, get me a developer. But there's front end, there's back end, there's DevOps. There are all these things, right? And the same thing with marketers. A marketer is not a marketer is not a marketer. There's 3 or 4 kinds of marketers that are relevant to a startup or any company, right, in the early stages. One is a brand marketer, and the job of a brand marketer is to grow your brand and your visual identity and your presence, like your PR and so on. You don't need that in the early days, right? In the early days, what you need is just some leads to turn them into customers. That's demand gen. Or if you're a predominantly self-serve product where people can easily try, buy, and cancel, like an e-webinar, then you probably need a growth marketer where they touch not just the sign up, but the whole funnel, right? Get people to sign up, get people to onboard and activate, get them to retain, and then refer other customers, right? The whole gamut of it. And so that growth marketer also needs to have some product marketing chops, because tied to it is how they message, like through emails and in product messaging. But if you just hire a product marketer in the early days, then they won't have the growth chops, right? So I think you got to hire basically, if you're a B2B SaaS that's predominantly sold through sales-led, hire a demand gen person who can generate sales qualified leads for your sales team. And or maybe you have 2 AEs in the early days and there's no sales team, or maybe it's you as a founder selling, hire a demand gen person. And if you're a self-serve PLG style product, hire a growth marketer who can touch the whole funnel from sign up to referral.
The most expensive mistake I ever made on a hire was hiring someone that had only worked in a medium and large size company. And too early, like that role was too early for our company. So it was like a 2-problem situation. When we brought this person on board, this person was the highest paid person on our team, more than our CTO, more than our CEO, because it was someone we really, really wanted to recruit because he had been very successful in his role, a very specialized role in bigger companies. And I naively thought that those skills were transferable. But it turns out when someone has only worked with a lot of resource with companies that have like credibility, which a small company like us doesn't, those skills are not actually transferable, right? Like they don't have the same urgency, right? They don't work with people that move as fast as us. And unfortunately, because we spent so much time trying to recruit this person, when I realized that it wasn't a good fit, I didn't want to admit it. And I spent 11 months sitting on this decision when I kind of knew already at like month 4 or 5. And now I know that not only can you not hire people that don't know how to be agile, like only work with large companies, it doesn't matter how much they want to work with a startup, they don't know how, but also you can't hire a role that is way too early for where you're at.
Everything ties to that product market fit, right? Like the cycle of a startup goes in, I need to validate it. I need to then get to product market fit, which is customers are using the product and predominantly staying. Then I figure out a repeatable, scalable way to acquire customers. And maybe that's 2 ways. Maybe it's like content and community, or maybe it's sales, whatever it is, you figure it out. Before any department is coin operated, if you try to jam a specialist, especially one from a large company, you're setting yourself up for failure, because this person is typecast to doing one thing. And that one thing may not pan out after a few weeks or a few months of testing, and they may need to pivot to figuring out something else. But because they're specialists, especially specialists working at large companies, are used to operating with a lot of resources, they can't pivot very easily, right? A lot of large company people, again, their pride matters a lot, right? And so they need to show perfection. In a startup, though, perfection is the enemy of done. And so what I found, I think we've spent millions of dollars, right? Or rather lost millions of dollars on hiring big company folks. And they've, for the most, never worked out because they expect to have more resources. They hire people to do the job. PowerPoint pontification kills your progress. And in the early stages, because in the early stages is the time that you can grow the fastest, velocity is your currency.
I mean, I think there is a misconception that if you can do something big, you can do something small, but it's almost never the case.
It's like we said about advice, right? Don't take advice from people who haven't been on the journey from where you are to where you want to go. They haven't experienced that. And the same thing for employees. Never hire somebody who hasn't gone from where you are to where you want to go. You're just experimenting. You're creating more risk for your business than anything else. And your responsibility is to do right by your customers, your employees, your shareholders, and not, oh, I hired this person, let me keep this person long enough, right? I think a lot of us, hiring mistakes are okay. They happen. A lot of founders, you can't know everything about everything. A lot of founders are not experts. We're naive. That's why we jump in. And then we learn along the way, right? You learn to make that parachute when you're jumping down from an airplane. The key is to learn fast. The rate of your growth is directly proportionate to the rate of your learning. And one of the worst things to do is delay the inevitable. Nobody has ever told me that I did not regret delaying the inevitable, right? Like we let go a big company CTO. The signs were there in the first 2 months. I was waving my arms and everything else, but it's like more time, more time, more time. And then you delay the inevitable. Before you hire a role, you need to understand and write down what is the goal of this role, within what timeline, and what are the leading indicators? What does good look like? And if they're not checking the boxes on the leading indicators, like if a product person doesn't go and talk to customers in the first couple of weeks and is just sharing slideshows, you know something's wrong. If a sales leader is not bringing on their sales reps from their previous jobs, they're not coaching, they're not improving the close ratio, even marginally in the first 30 days, something's wrong. If a marketer comes in and says, hey, you know what, let's rebrand and let's do a new website, you know they're asking for a 6-month hall pass. The marketer's job in the early stages is to improve the lead flow. And if a CTO comes in and they don't immediately, within the 30 days or so, impact dev velocity, which they can do, by the way. They can change the way sprints are planned. They can change the way prioritization is done. They can realign resources if you're a knowledgeable CTO, right? David came into your startup, right, before and took it over from the agency and improved dev velocity immediately.
Yeah.
So if these signs are not there, then just part ways. You're doing a disservice to your employees, your customers, your shareholders.
And that was exactly the time when I realized I need to bring David in as a co-founder. Within a week, it already started working. A product that we were trying to build for a year, like none of the buttons worked. And then he came in and stuff started to work because he started to restructure things, getting his hands dirty. It was in that moment that I was like, how do I bring him in as a co-founder and end this relationship with the dev shop? Because I'm just burning money in the fire right now. And on the flip side, the big company exec that I talked about, I kept convincing myself that it's okay, just need more time. It's a revenue position, takes more time to build these relationships. He's new to the company. And I just kept justifying my way away from that gut feeling. But I think these are things that you just get better at, right? As you experience them as a founder.
The team you hire in the early days ends up being the company you build, right? Because the culture that gets created amongst the first few is what scales. And if you bring a bunch of slow movers, complainers, who need more and more resources, who don't move with velocity, that is what's going to perpetuate. And then eventually you'll just have a bloated startup that has no other destiny than failing.
So what do you think is the solution here? How can people avoid these mistakes and hire great people?
I think one of the key things that I now employ is work with people on a project basis before you hire them. Because think about it. Negotiation takes a long time. salary, stock options, add to that onboarding costs, offboarding costs, benefits, and like the honeymoon phase. Hire contractors or people on a project basis to work for a specific deliverable on a tight timeline. Basically consult for you. I need to deliver this by this date. Let's do it. And see how you guys work together. It's like try before you buy, but the best way to get to know somebody is to work with them to deliver a tangible outcome on a tight timeline.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's firing fast, right? And I know that those two words have such negative, like they carry such negative connotation. Like I once wrote a viral post on LinkedIn about firing fast, and it got so much hate because it was people like coming in saying, "Oh, you're so ruthless. You don't give people chances. How can you promote this?" And it actually made me look inwards, like, "Oh, why?" Like I didn't even realize that it would make people have such a strong reaction. But what I realized was firing fast, it doesn't mean not giving chances. It doesn't mean like, firing someone, asking them to leave tomorrow, right? It doesn't mean that we didn't try our best. But what it does mean as a founder is learning to have hard conversations with someone as soon as you know it's not going to work out after you've given them enough chances. And that's a hard thing to do because so much emotion is involved, right? It's not like we can't all hire George Clooney to like fire people for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish we could, right? But like learning how to have those hard conversations, because it's like dating, right? Like if this relationship's not going to work out, I'm not doing you a favor by staying with you, right? I should cut you loose so you can find someone that is a better fit for you. And it works in companies too. When I need to fire someone, it's not always because they can't deliver, right? It's because they can't deliver for my stage of a startup, or maybe my type of a startup, right? Or maybe we don't jive, right? Or maybe there's something about the vibe that doesn't work with the team. So they need to go and find something that does fit them, because it cannot feel good to be at a company where you're not successful, where you're just beating a dead horse, right? Like just let them go. And also on the other side, like if you're an employee and you're listening to this, like don't do that shit like quiet quitting and look for another, like be honest about this position not working out for you, because just know that when someone's giving you a chance, it's like you're taking something away from them. And if you're not giving it your best, you're not doing them a favor by trying to stay on board and be 50% of what you can actually be.
There's two sides to this argument, right? Employees who are just employers who are just toxic bosses who would rather frustrate the hell of the employees that are not working out versus coach them, share the right expectations. They deserve to have employees who then just quiet quit and drag things along. There's two sides of the equation, right? I think the best way to optimize for this is do your diligence on how you hire. I think that is key. Hire for trajectory, not for tenure, number one. Hire more generalists because you need people to pivot fast and flex in multiple directions. Do those extra interviews. You want people who are in love with what you're doing. They have the passion for what you're doing versus people who are just doing it to collect a paycheck and go. It's hard. Doing a startup is hard, right? And the last thing you need is somebody who's just passive about it. You need them to be passionate about it. You need them to be pirates, right? Like things change. There's risks. They need to be pirates. They need to be able to poke fingers and stick elbows and get things done. That means if you have to call somebody and hustle to make it happen or find a connection, you make it happen. I'll give you an example. Like in the early days of Boast, even till I left the day-to-day, if we need something done, I would make the call to make it done, right? And it wouldn't be like, oh, I emailed the support line and tried and they didn't respond. No, I would find a common connection with the founder or CEO of that company or CTO or somebody who could make the decision happen and make it happen for me. Find that intro. We needed access to OpenAI in 2020. I had a friend who had the same angel investor, and as them, and I leveraged that to get an intro there and then get us an in, right? The answer, if employees know they need to deliver an outcome on a tight timeline, and one of the leading indicators is they need to get an answer from someone, and you see the status of it is they reached out and they didn't get any answer, then that's not good enough. What did you do to reduce the timeline of that response? How many times did you follow up? Did you go around? Did you go above? Did you find the right connection there? Like my kids, I'll give you a very similar example. I wanted to move to Dubai desperately. And my wife one day said, let's just figure out Dubai. And, when a partner says, figure this out, that means they're thinking about it, but they're not serious. You grew up in the US. And I had to come to Dubai for a week and figure out two things: get my residency and get the kids in school. If I pontificated and didn't come back with that, she would have probably changed her mind. In 7 days, I made every possible call and pulled every string to, one, find a connection to get the kids not on the wait list, but a school admission, and get my residency visa. And by the end of the week, I did. I flew back with that, and my wife had no option but to say, yes, I told you, and I committed, right? You need to have this make it happen attitude, like your life depends on it, because it does in the early days.
Yeah. So what is your one hot take from today's conversation?
I think my one hot take is always hire doers. Hire people who can get stuff done. How do you find out if they can get stuff done? It's not what they did in their 9 to 5. I don't care what you studied in school. I care about what you did between 5 to 9, right? And you may have been a creator and grew a following on TikTok, but that tells me you did something, because creating content is so hard. Or you may pursued an art project and saw it through and won a competition. I care more about the way I find out about a person's trajectory is the speed at which they take action in the 5 to 9 to get stuff done. Maybe it's a volunteer project you help raise money for in a short amount of time. That tells me about your trajectory. And I care more about people who have accolades in the 5 to 9 than their 9 to 5.
I mean, my hot take is, I really like what you said about being responsible to your team, your customers, your co-founder, and investors if you have them, is you need to think about hiring as a fiscally responsible decision.
100%.
Like, is it fiscally responsible for me to keep this person or not? And your gut is probably right.
And if you frame it that way, Melissa, like, is it a fiscally responsible decision? This was the goal. This was the timeline. This was the leading indicators. And we didn't check the leading indicators, so we know the goal is not going to be met within the timeline. And we have to meet that timeline. And if we don't rectify the bad decision we made X days before hitting that timeline, we have no way of hitting that timeline. So I need to make a change. So if you treat it like project management in many ways and say, I need to do right by my founders, my co-founders, my customers, my employees, my shareholders, if you have them, I think it becomes a calm, non-emotional decision. Business is not meant to be emotional, right?
And that's it for today's episode.
If you enjoyed this episode, we hope you'll hit the subscribe button to the Unicorn Porn podcast on your favorite podcast app. Head over to our website, UnicornPrn.com, to see the show notes of every episode. Unicorn Porn is spelled UnicornPrn. That's UnicornPrn without the O. You can also join our mailing list to be notified of new episodes or when we have hot gossip to share. We promise to only share things you'll actually care about.
If you have topics you want us to rip apart, perhaps you got something you always wanted to say but didn't have the cojones to do it, we'll do it for you. Just connect with us on LinkedIn, Lloyd Lobo and Melissa Kwan.